Hello, ladies and gents. Welcome to the live. We started a little bit early. Preemptive strike. We're creeping up on people. They don't even know we're there. And we're starting early. I'm going to talk first about trauma bonding and a conversation I had with a friend of mine recently that really clarified what I think a lot of people are struggling with. Because obviously, from my point of view, I answer questions, then I go and do a little bit of research, and then I answer questions and I read some more research. But because it's not really part of my daily experience anymore, I can start to lose sight of what it is subjectively to be stuck in a narcissistically abusive relationship. And so the questions that she asked me are quite basic and straightforward, but it's nice to get refocused. It's nice to get refocused on these things. So she was saying to me, she's in a situation where there was a tumultuous relationship, of course, because it's a narcissistically abusive relationship. And it ended badly. And then she had an interaction. They were on and off, and she had an interaction with her narcissistically abusive ex where she induced a narcissistic injury. And she made a passing humorous comment about one of his friends saying, "Oh, he's a good looking guy. Why have you never introduced me to him before? Ha ha ha. It was a joke." And he said, "Ha ha ha," at the time. But inside his mind, he was thinking, "How dare you?" So he got her on a video call and then proceeded to later, 24 hours later, on some pretext to talk about something else. And then over a process of 45 minutes, he verbally berated her and told her how useless and pathetic she was, how ugly she was, how he saw her as being like a dog or a servant to her, until she started crying. And she came to me and she said, first of all, does this sound like narcissistic abuse? And she told me more details of the story, and I was like, there's probably elements of psychopathy here, could even be dark triad stuff. So dark triad is when you have narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. When you have dark tetrad, then we add sadism to that. So some people are also highly sadistic. Narcissistic personality disorder is not particularly sadistic, but it can be comorbid with other patterns of behavior. And she said to me, I know he's abusive and I know that he's mentally sick and that that's causing the abuse, but I can't get him out of my head and I want to win the interaction. So I want him, they're now not talking to each other. She was saying, will he come back to me? Can you guarantee he'll come back to me? And I said, no, nobody can guarantee he's going to come back to you. Well, I read stuff online that said they always come back. They always do a process called hoovering. And I said, the only thing that I'm aware of after 12 years of working in the subject and studying the subject that determines a narcissistically abusive person's patterns of behavior is narcissistic supply. This is the fuel for the engine of the false self. So if it generates narcissistic supply, they'll do it. If it's not going to generate narcissistic supply, they won't do it. Narcissistic supply roughly is undue validation, attention, or adulation, disproportionate adulation, that they have either tricked, coerced, or bullied from an ostensibly loving audience or audience member. It could be a group of people or it could be one. So the only thing that's going to determine what he does next is the narcissistic supply. And nobody can tell you because there's no online coach or person writing a blog post that can tell you where he's up to with garnering narcissistic supply. But it is, I think, at this point, the biggest determinant of the narcissistic abuser's next move. What supply, which is fuel that feeds the engine of the false self, of the grandiose false self. Remembering, of course, that the essence of narcissistic personality disorder is a psychotic break from reality that's held in place by willingly induced dissociative states that lets the person live in a fantasy like a child, pretending to be Superman or pretending to be a little princess or whatever the child is pretending to be. Now we have an adult within an infantilized worldview pretending to be something and pretending to live a life that isn't theirs. And this is the grandiose, delusional, false self. He will come back if he can't find high quality fuel to support the engine of the false self, because you pour fuel in one side, you pour fuel into the engine burns it up. As the engine is running hot, high, the engine is full, the tank is full, then the narcissistic false self is big and strong. When the quality of the fuel goes down or the quantity of the fuel goes down, that projected image, it weakens. And as it weakens, the narcissist feels anxiety. They become terrified because this is, to them, an existential threat. They're so associated to the false self that they come to believe it is them. So if they're not receiving supply, it creates like a deathly feeling. They start to move towards death. So narcissistic depletion looks like a normal person's depression, but actually what it is a kind of, it is sadness, it is abandonment, a sense of self-abandonment, but it's also laced with fear. Narcissistic personality disordered individuals are typically highly, highly anxious because they have to continually work to keep the false image going, to keep that supply going. So I said the only thing that's going to determine that is if he's in a situation where he can, dependent on his coordinates. So if, for the sake of this story, we say this is an exceptionally good-looking girl, and he lives a lifestyle where it's important for him to have that status symbol on his arm of a very, very exceptionally good-looking girl, a very good-looking woman on his arm, then that's the coordinates for his narcissistic structure, that his narcissistic supply and his narcissistic self-delusional false self is very dependent on. If he can go and find, 3 other women who are going to give him that attention that he can go out and flex with, then he'll be okay. If he can't do that, or the introjects inside of him are saying, this isn't real, they don't really like you, they're not like her. We are interchangeable to the narcissist, but that doesn't mean they don't have favorites. We are all interchangeable tools to be instrumentalized to the narcissist, but that doesn't mean he or she doesn't prefer getting narcissistic supply from particular individuals under particular circumstances. And if you imagine if you were a drug addict and you got very high grade, very high level drugs, and then you had to go back to like badly cut street level drugs, it would hurt. It would suck. And you would go into narcissistic depletion. So you would go back to try and get that original supply of really high grade drugs. To the normal person, the non-narcissist, they look at that behavior and go, oh, she really does value me. Look, she went out and tried with other people, but it didn't work. And she's coming back to me. And she's telling me how special I am. And she's telling me how much she loves me. So this is about the fact that she loves me. No, this is about the fact that she regards you as very high quality narcissistic supply, and other people don't compare to that. Don't conflate the two. If the narcissist is coming back to you and saying, apologizing, showing vulnerability, even going so far as crying, that's not an indication that they've actually authentically become vulnerable with you. He could just be doing that as a tactic to pull you back in because he regards you as high quality narcissistic supply, not a high quality human being who he really loves and has a special connection with. When they say, I love you, what they mean is, I love the way you make me look to my audience. I love you translates to, I love the way you make me look in the reflection of the false self and in the reflection of other people, because I'm all about how other people see me, and I need them to see me as powerful, intelligent, sexy, high status, whatever it is. She then said to me, I have this very strong lingering feeling that I want to get back at him. I want him to come back. This is why she's asking me the question. I want him to come back so that I can reject him. And I said, okay, are you aware that after you've spent a certain amount of time in a narcissistically abusive relationship, you start to internalize that person? and you start to operate from their coordinates, because all human beings, when they come together, you have human one, you have human two, they come together, they create a third thing. That connection between two human beings really is unique. That particular color and shape of individual one, the color and shape of individual two, when it comes together, it creates a third particular, peculiar, colored shaped entity. And that's the relationship. This is all normal. It's all healthy. In order to mediate a relationship, we engage in a shared fantasy space. This was discovered by a chap whose name I can't remember. He's from the University of Kent, and he did it in 1989. And his name is one syllable, but I cannot remember. Could you look up shared fantasy origin for me, please? Dylan is here in the studio today, and he's the producer. He's helping us out. He is, what's that chap called? Joe Rogan's version of Jamie today.
Irish Jamie, that's what they call me.
Irish Jamie. And so this chap, that we're hopefully going to be able to figure out who it is, he came up with the idea of the shared fantasy, and that's normal in all human relationships. The best way that I can think of as a non-intellectual person understanding it is, if you're going to play Dungeons and Dragons, the payoff of playing Dungeons and Dragons is you willfully suspend your disbelief. And in order to cooperate, to enjoy the benefits of being in the game, you must pretend for the duration of the game that that person is the dungeon master. This one is an orc. This one is an elf. You are a wizard, whatever, to pay off the game. It's a very natural, unconscious instinct to engage in a shared fantasy space. However, did you get anything?
Sam Vagnin is what I've got here, possibly.
No, that's not the originator
Wonderful.
from the University.
Beautiful. Next time.
But he does talk about it a lot. I can't remember. It's a monosyllable name. It's gone. It's gone out of my brains. Don't box, kids. And if you are going to box, use very light contact, I would recommend. Inside of a narcissistically abusive relationship, of course, that shared fantasy space is very predatory. It's perverted. It's corrupted. And so when you're engaged in that shared fantasy space, you are unconsciously coerced into playing certain roles. And even some of the feelings that you're feeling are not your feelings. They are emotional artifacts that go into making up that unique shared fantasy space. And so across time, what can begin to happen is you start to develop narcissistic coordinates. So if they're histrionic, hypersexual, obsessed with their sexual attractiveness, you won't be exactly like them. If they're at 100, you might raise your levels to like 20 or 30%. But you will become hyper-competitive, hypersexual, and obsessed with sex, as one example. In this situation, I believe what had happened is she'd taken his competitiveness, his need to be right, his desperate, pathetic need to win, and to see all human transaction as a game with points to be won. She'd imbibed that, as I have in the past in narcissistically abusive relationships, as all you will have done at some point as well. And you start to pick up their coordinates. And she's like, I have to win. I have to win. And I said to her, you've picked up his coordinates, right? This isn't, unless you were like this before you got with him, and you thought in this very infantile way that love is a game, love is a competition, sex is a competition that can be won. Unless you thought about that before you were with him, this is likely coming from him. And it's an unhealthy way of looking at things that you might want to consider letting go of. And she didn't fight me, I was amazed. I was absolutely amazed, because usually when I say this to people, they get very rigid and they get very defensive. And she went, yes, no, I understand perfectly well that I've internalized him and that this is coming from him. So I went, great. So the only thing you need to do is recognize that those parts of you, that impulse inside of you, is not you. And this is why the topic of introjects is so important. Once you've been in a narcissistically abusive relationship and you've introjected the narcissist, they keep talking to you and they keep directing even your emotions, I claim, and even your patterns of behavior. Again, this is my claim. I don't think this is mainstream psychology. This is what I think happens. The idea of the introject would usually stop in psychoanalytic theory with the idea that you are receiving messages. You are receiving what are called superego injunctions. Don't do this, do this. This is important, that's not important. Or impulses, like you have the impulse to do something weird that you wouldn't normally do. If you track your behavior and your life decisions in the 6 to 9 months after ending a narcissistically abusive relationship, you can track that some of your decisions were a little bit odd and possibly a little bit self-destructive as well. So that was that. I said, you really mustn't compete with him in this way. It's not going to bring you fulfillment. In fact, what his narcissistic introject, that colonized part of your mind that's now colonized by him, is trying to do is it's actually not about winning a competition. It's just trying to draw you back into contact with him. The narcissist's introject is saying, return to me. The ego is saying, I want recontact with him so I can win this thing. I'm going to win. I'm going to show him. But that's not really what you're trying to do at all. That part of you is just trying to get you back in touch with the narcissist again. And as you all know, any and all contact with a narcissist is an opportunity for abuse. Did you find anything else?
Someone in the chat has put in that they found a term, the term shared fantasy was coined by a Sander F in 1989.
Thank you so much. Oh. It's Sander. It's Sander. Yes, Sander. You know what? I used to live with a guy called Sander, who wasn't my boyfriend. We were flat sharing. Sander. Okay, that's how I'm going to remember it. I'll think of Sander. He was a lovely Dutch person. And Sander. Yes, Sander came up with the shared fantasy in 1989. So the last thing that she said to me was that I thought would be relevant for everybody here is he's the first thing I think about in the morning and the last thing I think about at night. So again, this is part of the introject. When we're looking to heal the introjects, I'll talk about healing the introjects in a second. We also have to recognize that there's a trauma bond at play here. So if you've had somebody in your life who's given you your lowest lows, your highest highs, and broken all of your boundaries and gotten you to forego your normal values, your normal patterns of behavior, and your normal ways of doing things, that person will be recognized by your mind, your emotions, your body, and your central nervous system as a very, very significant person. My pet theory is that this is through, the root of this is quite basic Pavlovian conditioning. Hello, sir. Jacob's in. The neural conditioning. So a neural pathway has been burnt very deep between this person and a wealth of emotions. And I think at the dumbest parts of ourselves that are not incapable of critical thought, it just says this person must be highly, highly significant. This person must be all powerful. They must be very important because look at all these reference experiences, all these very intense memories we have around them, and look at all these intense feelings we have for them. When they speak, I should listen. It's another way of describing the trauma bond. Of course, a lot of this is the little man behind the curtain at the end of Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz is a fantasy. It's a projection. That's the false self. And what's really there is something quite pathetic. And good therapy and good coaching across time can lead you to seeing the duplicitousness, to seeing what is essentially a con. It's a horrible revelation. It's a horrible apocalyptic vision that we have to go through in order to recover from narcissistic abuse. But once you've gone through this temporary pain, this temporary grieving, this temporary trauma of realizing that they were never the person you thought they were, that they were always this wretched, mean, cruel, and quite weak individual in their core, then you can begin to recover. Because apart from anything else, your brain's going to stop saying, we're losing somebody really significant and special. You're not. There was nothing there. It's a phantasm. Healing the introjects is a little bit of a complicated procedure. I have a course to help you to do that. It's called Narcissistic Matrix Reintegration. Now, for the next few days on the website, everything is going to be, I don't know what I told Max to do. I think I told him to do a 50% discount. which seems rather generous still, and I don't know quite why I've done that, but it's
Sounds
done.
just like you're rich.
It's a little bit much, but we did it. We'll stick with it, and the code for that is October 50. October is all capital letters, all uppercase, 50, and apparently, if you put that coupon code in, you get it 50% off. I'll just Max, can you make it 25? Okay. We'll stick with 50 because I said 50 when I was stressed out. I was on the street in Liverpool before and I was messaging him and I was like, oh, I don't know, give him a 50% discount. Okay, so if you want to get that course, you can. All the courses are available at a 50% discount for the next few days. But that gives you a description step by step of how to do this. So if you don't want to buy the course, the Cliff Notes version, or you already have a therapist, or you already have a coach, the Cliff Notes version, so you don't need to buy anything, would be sit with your therapist and your coach and learn to recognize and identify the introject as not you. Come up with ways of resisting the injunctions or the messages. The injunctions and the messages include the fantasies. They include, that movie you play in your mind of the narcissist, where they in the old 50s movies, they'd rub Vaseline on the lens. That's right, isn't it, Dylan?
It is right.
Make it look soft and blurry, and then sentimental music plays, sentimental Korean music, sad Korean music plays, and everything, it's raining and it's in slow motion. And then you just see them and you have your best memories with them. That's actually all from their introject. That's the introjected part of them, is like, remember the good times. Wasn't this amazing? Wasn't this compelling? Or you'll imagine them like a lost puppy in the rain, living in a cardboard box under a bridge, like an RSPCA advert with really big sad eyes. I can't believe you've left me. This is the coerced abandonment dynamic, where they coerce you unconsciously to think of yourself as a parent and them as a vulnerable child. In the Karpman triangle, Karpman, not Cartman, in the Karpman triangle, you're being forced into the position of rescuer whilst they're the victim. Doesn't matter that they've been abusive. Doesn't matter that they lied to you, they cheated on you, they did this, they did that. You're still at an unconscious level compelled to see yourself as a rescuer. All of this is coming from the introject. So when you're asking me, why am I still angry? Why am I still ruminating? Why am I still obsessed? Why do I feel so compelled to go back? Because that introject is powerful and it's still running. I had questions on Instagram with people like, how do I murder the introject? How do I kill the introject? We don't kill parts of ourselves, darlings. We balance them, we integrate them, we explore them, we expand them. I understand you're angry and that you get frustrated. I've lived it, sadly not once, 2 or 3 times. 3 times. And it's very hard. And you get very angry with yourself and you get very angry with that person. You just want to get on with your life. And in that state, you can be like, how do I, you get aggressive, you get defensive. How do I kill the introject? Don't kill the introject. If you go with violence and aggression to a part of yourself, you're actually going to make it stronger. You're going to make it more powerful. You explore it, you dismantle it, you dissipate it, you integrate it through understanding, through detachment, through clarity of vision, preferably done with a therapist or a coach, or with a course that guides you how to do it. If you're struggling though, you probably should consider getting some face-to-face therapy time as well as doing the course if you've got the resources to be able to do it. So what I would say to her is what I would say to all of you. Start with forgiveness. Forgive yourself for getting into this relationship. If you're all pissy about it and you're pissed off with yourself, because she was saying she was really angry with him. And I said, well, you're never angrier than when you're angry with yourself. And she was like, no, you're right. I'm angry with me for letting him do this. All right. Anger's valid. We're good psychotherapists. We're good hippies. Anger is valid, man. Your anger is valid, man. But you would be less angry if you could forgive yourself for having made a mistake. It's not that hard. You're a human being. You thought the person was one thing. They turned out to be something else. You wanted love. You wanted intimacy. or if it was with a parent, you wanted your mum to act like a mum, and you just kept dreaming that one day she would actually show up as a mother, or your father as a father, or whatever the relationship dynamic was, or your friend. You wanted something. And what you wanted was valid. You wanted friendship. You wanted a mother's love. You wanted to experience love and sexual intimacy. All completely valid. If you would allow your friend to do that, if you would allow me to do that, then you must allow yourself to do it. Rigidly judging yourself harshly for making a mistake is coming from where? The narcissistic introject. That's what locks the abuse in place and is making this so hard for so many people to recover from. They start angry and pissed off with themselves from a perfectionistic, I should have known better. I should have done better than this. Like, whoa, calm down. There's parts of you that are hurting here. Just chill. You made a mistake. All of that like hard, aggressive, bullying, confrontational, that's them. Remember in the CPTSD model, if you have love for Pete Walker, which you should, this is for the narcissist is a primary fight, secondary fawn response. There's real aggression here. And if it's getting into you, they were aggressive with you and they're very aggressive with themselves. You've internalized them. So you're going to be aggressive with you as they are aggressive with themselves and as they were aggressive with you. That's all coming from the narcissistic introject. That ain't you. Be forgiving, be kind, be humble, and just say, yeah, I made a mistake. It's okay. And then from there, you can start to release a lot of this. If it's all angry and you're pissed off and you're frustrated and you want it to go away quickly, it'll lock it in place. How long did I go on for?
That was a good 20 minutes.
Oh,
beautiful.
Just spitting bars, as the kids say. Spitting bars for real, on God, no cap, all facts.
Yes. Are you ready to move on to some questions?
I'm ready to move on to the skibbity riz.
Yes. With our fellow youths. Here we are. So we have a few questions in email, but if you have any questions in the chat, obviously fire away. I'm making notes as I go, but we'll prioritize these email ones first.
Oh yeah, we're going to do the email first. If you've got longer form questions that don't get autocorrected on your phone, email helpdesk@spartanlifecoach.info whilst we're live. After we're live, obviously Dylan can't read them to me and I can't answer them. And we'll do live chat questions at the same time. How many people we got watching?
We have exactly 411.
So much narcissistic supply for me. I'm delighted.
Loads.
Let's have one of these
Beautiful.
questions.
So first question from a BB. So why do people struggle to accept there's a narcissist in their social circle while simultaneously obsessively watching Netflix shows about them?
Sounds like you're talking about somebody specific. You said, why? What did you say? Why do people, or why would someone?
Why do people?
Why do people? You mean your friend Mary? She's doing your head in. She won't recognize as a narcissist in the social circle, but she just loves those Netflix shows about psychopaths and narcissists and all that true crime stuff. I always think with a situation like this, I like to use like the Adler framework. So people know Jung, people know Freud, but there was a third member of the Holy Trinity of psychoanalysis, which is Alfred Adler. And I like his stuff is very, very practical, pragmatic. It's profit and loss. Why would I not see? Why would I refuse to see there's a cup of coffee here? From the Adlerian perspective, you could they're all games. We're all playing games and we're all living a story. What do I benefit from not seeing the coffee cup? And what would it cost me to see the coffee cup? So your friend doesn't want to see that there's somebody in your girls group, in the mimosa group, Mimosa Thursdays or Fridays or whenever you do mimosas over in America, who's actually somewhere on the spectrum, because she doesn't want, it costs her to see that person that way. And she likes the benefits of not seeing the person that way. And it's probably as simple as that.
Simple as that. Okay, the next question we have is anonymous, but it is, I am currently helping a family member in the aftermath of abuse from the same narcissist. How can I maintain my peace and well-being and not experience setbacks in my own healing?
That's very, very difficult. You know, people who do this for a living, like qualified clinicians, they get coaching specifically for this issue. and before they become therapists. And then whilst they're therapists, they take supervision. So your therapist sees a therapist, and it should be once a week, because it's very hard to interact with somebody in a shared fantasy space, including therapy, to interact with another human being with empathy. And in order to understand your experience, I hear your story, I vividly imagine it, and it kind of looks and feels like my story, and then my emotions and my feelings and my perceptions and my prejudices come up. So it's nigh on impossible. I would say with this, I think there's a risk that people can think they can kind of do this stuff casually and it's going to be okay. It probably isn't going to be okay. It probably is going to bring up unresolved stuff for you, unless that stuff was resolved with therapy first, and then you were trained to do therapy on the subject without getting triggered by it again. So I would suggest trying to get the help of a qualified clinician with that one. That would be safer for both of you.
Perfect. We have Stefan in the chat who's thrown in £4.99.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, so we'll read out his question. How will a man be affected if they have been raised by a narcissistic mother?
It would be somewhat influenced by whether her expression of narcissism was grandiose and overt or covert. Did you ever watch The Sopranos? You should. Tony Soprano's mother was written with a good understanding of psychiatry and psychotherapy as a classic narcissistic mother. And the creator of the show based it, David Spade. Could you look up the creator of The Sopranos? We love nerding out on TV shows. Oh, poor you was one of her expressions. So if you went to her and said, I hurt myself or I hurt my toe, she had no, or I lost money or something bad happened. She had no bandwidth for that, no patience for other people suffering, and would always reply with, oh, poor you, and then go into her suffering. So if typically it would be more on the fragile, covert side of the spectrum with narcissistic mothers. David Henry Chase was the creator of the show, and he based the character Tony Soprano's mother on his own mother. It's a good show. It's one of the best TV shows ever made. But from the narcissism perspective, like the first 2 seasons are really, really good from that point of view. So there's no guarantee as to what would happen with you. But let's say you have you're a man, and you have a very, very coercive mother who wants to parentify you and engages in emotional incest. So parentification, she's going to get you to carry the weight of her role as a parent whilst you're a child and turn you into another parent instead of keeping you safe and keeping the relationship safe where she's the parent, you're the child. She'll put responsibility on you that shouldn't be there. This is very boundary breaking and is a form of emotional incest. For you in your life, then, it's going to be difficult for you to say no to women. It's going to be difficult for you to express yourself naturally and spontaneously in a red-blooded and healthy way as a man with natural masculinity, because I'm now doing a little bit of projection, I'm guessing here, she may have punished you as a child for expressions of independence, rebellion, or normal boyish boisterousness. Why? Typically, the covert narcissist vectors in with the clinical entity that we have that's called a borderline personality disorder. Borderline personality disordered mothers and fathers, if they see the child as individuating from them, they can't stand the idea. They engage in fusing and merging with the child. So you are part of them. You are like a limb. So you've become a part of them. And if that part of them starts to individuate and separate from them, it can induce abandonment terror. That abandonment terror triggers a narcissistic injury, and that triggers narcissistic rage. So was your mother on the rageaholic spectrum? If yes, you might find yourself with very openly aggressive women, or if your sexual preference didn't develop into like a heterosexual model and you preferred men, you would, whether it's a man or a woman you're with, you're going to create a dynamic, co-create a dynamic with them where things are very dramatic and explosive. And they can become very angry and aggressive. And then you become very angry and aggressive and you have very, very loud arguments. If she wasn't a rageaholic and she wasn't very aggressive with you, but used a lot of covert manipulation tactics and guilt tripping and shaming, whether you're straight or gay, your partner that you choose, you're going to probably unconsciously recreate that childhood script and co-create a situation where you constantly feel guilty and ashamed for being you, constantly feel guilty and ashamed for wanting what you want, having a real difficulty with stating what your boundaries are, having a real difficulty with just being you. So in this day and age, we see this a lot with a lot of men. So you'll have men who are very, very cowed. And then on the flip side of it, you'll have men who engage in like ultra masculine displays of sort of an extreme idea of what masculinity is. Neither is healthy. One is animus possessed and the other one is role playing like a 15-year-old idea, a 15-year-old boy's idea of how a man should act. Like getting big muscles and big tattoos and being like, you know, speaking with like a deeper voice than they really have and trying to be the alpha male and all that. And then at the other side, you have men who could be very, very cowed. They could be very, very flat. They could be very, very indecisive. They live their lives as ghosts. They just fit and mold with whatever is going on around them. Like we call it in Jungian psychology, that's anima possession. So, these are the potential outcomes of having a narcissistic mother as a man. I hope that you found that useful.
Wonderful. So next question from the email we have: 9 years out of a 36-year marriage to a covert narcissist. Been to therapy, read so much, know I'm in a better place. I still think of him. He's now got dementia and supportive children, and the children talk to me about his condition. I'm scarred by him. I don't feel able to have another relationship. What else do I need to do to feel cleansed of what he did to me?
Fight a therapist and demand a refund for all the time that they wasted. Not all therapists are created equal. I do recommend people try and find qualified clinicians, but these are human beings. They have different levels of training, different levels of stuff that they bring to the therapeutic process. And to be honest with you, narcissistic abuse is very, very difficult to help a client overcome without, you really need to specialize in it, because it's like bomb disposal or dealing with a wound, a complicated wound. So if somebody has like a gunshot and it's just gone through and through the flesh, that might not be that complicated. But if they're hit with little tiny pieces of shrapnel, it's much more difficult to get all that stuff out. I got glassed when I was 21. Somebody hit a glass into the side of my face and it burst the glass, and tiny little shards went into the lid of my eye, the nose, into the lip, into the gum. And they got most of it out, but some of it they just had to leave in because there's loads of little bits and pieces. If your therapist isn't trained to deal with that, little bits and pieces can get left in. So I'll say this, if the shared fantasy space was not thoroughly and consciously dismantled, which you can learn how to do in the course Unplugged from the Matrix of Narcissistic Abuse, and if the introject is not thoroughly exorcised from you, as you can learn how to do in Narcissistic Matrix Reintegration course, I wouldn't expect you to not still be obsessed with them. I wouldn't expect you to feel like you can love again, because they're still there. Covert narcissistic abuse, between vulnerable narcissism and grandiose narcissism, covert and overt, I would much, much rather be dealing with a classic grandiose narcissist. I've worked with classic grandiose narcissists. They can be handled. They can be dealt with. They can be satiated. The vulnerable covert narcissist is a roller coaster inside of a hall of mirrors whilst on a heavy dose of acid. It's a very unpleasant trip and it's very, very confusing. And I think another one of my pet theories that's not from the published literature is it actually leaves the target with a damaged capacity to sort fact from fiction. It's very difficult for somebody after a BPD or a fragile narcissist relationship to sort fact from fiction. Well, guess what? In order to live life, You need to have that part of you that can sort fantasy from reality working well. It works on a spectrum for most people. Like some people have it, some people don't. But after that kind of a relationship, yours will be worsened because they convinced you to stay with them for so long. So we know that deliberately, though may not, possibly not consciously, they have damaged your capacity to sort fact from fiction. That damages your ability to make therapy. So that has to be dealt with as well in a therapeutic process. It is possible, but it is difficult. You must do the things that I've just outlined.
Beautiful. We have a bit of a longer question in, so just buckle in and we'll go through it. But thank you
Okey-dokey.
very much. Hello, Dylan and Richard. I am not obsessed with a psychopathic ex, but I have become way more insecure about my body and looks, way more jealous and just downright obnoxious. I know it's out of fear, and after many years, I often see a chink of light and space between trigger and reaction, which is progress. Albeit minuscule, it's huge to me. I wonder how I ever trust there's no scam being run against me once triggered. It escaped my conscious notice before, although my dreams and body were screaming at me to see it. My partner doesn't get it, and I won't keep trying to make him see why I get to be horrible, because that's clearly not right. How do we ever feel we are enough and could be something great in our own and another's life?
So I don't know you, and I've just heard your question read out, and I'm just going to trust that everything you've said is true. And I'm going to give you advice, but obviously you should take advice from a qualified clinician who's met you and has heard your full story. You sound, at the very least, like you have a very intense case of complex post-traumatic stress disorder. The boundaries between all your boundaries sound like that they have been damaged. So when we think of boundaries, we think like, oh, it's my capacity to say no to somebody when they ask me to do something I don't want to do. Yes, that is a boundary, but there's internal boundaries. The boundary between fact and fiction, the boundary between yourself and other people, the boundary between the present and the past, the boundary between how you feel and what you think. All of these sound like they've been damaged. Personally, I would recommend dealing with what you're coping with as a form of CPTSD first. There's a free course for this. It's on a YouTube channel that I have that's called Fortress Mental Health Protection. If you open a fresh tab, don't click away from this video, open a fresh tab, put into the YouTube search bar, Grannon Fortress. There's a whole free course there. It's got downloads, it's got a PDF, it's got audio downloads as well that helps you to reduce the emotional flashbacks and to reduce the power of these introjects that are working against you right now. There's problems between your self-perception. So your self-perception, it sounds like, is very persecutory. It's very perfectionistic. It's very judgmental. It's very narcissistic. That doesn't mean you have narcissistic personality disorder, but it's a part of you that's judging you in a very, very cruel way. The reaction to that cruelty sounds like rage and sounds like you're dealing with a degree of betrayal trauma that hasn't been moved yet. So I would recommend seeing a qualified clinician who specializes in CPTSD. I'd recommend doing that course. Why not? It's free. And then these are emotional flashbacks. Once the emotional flashbacks are brought down, you can start to feel safe again. When you feel safe inside of your own body, when these perceptions come up and these words in your head and these impulses in your head that say you're under threat, somebody's trying to do something nasty to you, you can then increase that space that you referenced between the trigger and response, and you have a much better chance of having a positive outcome, a positive ability to resist these impulses and to resist going into the full-blown flashback, this rage that you're going into where, as you say, you become a horrible person. That would be my advice to you. Can you just turn off the video and the sound for a second? I need to blow my nose.
Of course. One moment.
I'll be back.
Video and sound. And we're back.
Wonderful stuff. They shouldn't have to hear me
No.
blowing snot.
And I'm glad I did.
But you did. Yeah, you've got the cans on. Sorry, mate.
Okay, next question is from the chat from Cancer Moonchild. So, why do narcissists target individuals who are resistant to their sick games? It's like they are chasing rejection.
It's like I said before, there's not all narcissistic supply is created equal. So if they perceive you as being strong and defiant, where other people are just supplicating to them and just giving them what they want straight away, they might be tempted to regard that as a challenge and to see you as a higher order form of narcissistic supply. You may be, by being defiant, you may be altering their perception of you. So they're like, oh, this person is a much, much higher quality source of narcissistic supply.
Wonderful. Okay, we have one from Michael in the chat. Is there an actual way of being tested for being a narcissist?
There's online tests. I think I did a video that was like a brief test where you can score yourself. If you search my channel for test for narcissism, but there's online tests that you can do. Look, if you're worried about it, and you're thinking, oh God, I hope I'm not a narcissist, it's really unlikely that you would have full-blown narcissistic personality disorder. You might have pronounced narcissistic traits, but that's a world apart. Somebody with highly pronounced narcissistic traits hasn't had a psychotic break with reality, isn't living in a delusional psychotic spectrum dissociative state. It's just somebody who has pronounced narcissistic traits, which can be dealt with normal coaching and talk therapy. If you're worried about it, you probably don't have it. But go ahead and do some of the online tests. Some of them are free. A lot of them are free. There's a D-factor test. If you go to, if you Google D-factor, that will tell you how narcissistic, sadistic you are. That's definitely free. Just look up free online narcissism test. And usually they'll ask you to submit to their research. They'll be like, we would like to use your results in our research. And you have to sign a waiver for that. But it's anonymous, so just let them.
Perfect. We have one from Accidentally Agnostic in the chat. I believe I'm a recovering narcissist. I believe in healing and changing, but I worry that my husband should leave me for his own good.
It's an interesting statement. Did it come with a question mark?
It ended with a question mark.
So where did it come from? Was it in the chat?
It was in the YouTube chat, yes.
Could you put it up on screen?
Of course.
Thank you.
Moment. It's from Liliana.
I believe my husband should leave me for his own good.
Yes, but I worry that my husband should leave me for his own good.
Question mark. So it's unlikely that you're a recovering narcissistic personality disordered individual. I don't know why you think your husband should leave you for his own good if you're recovering. And I can't. There isn't really much of a question there for me to answer.
We will move on. Perfect. We have one that is, how does one realize a therapist is malignant?
Well, it should be. I mean, when you go to a therapist, and I hope you all do this for your GPs and for anybody that you see, your general practitioner, doctors, and anybody that you see. You go, we're not kids anymore. This isn't school. You don't submit fully to anything or anyone because they're just people. They're just little shaved apes in socks, the same as you are. So they're people. So they're going to make mistakes. So you never fully submit to a process until that person has proven themselves. And even after a person has proven themselves, you don't take everything somebody says on board and assume that it's free from any taint of ego or prejudice or dogma because they're people. So that's the first thing I would want to say. How do you know that they're becoming malignant? Well, by their words, you would know that. What are they saying to you in therapy? Are they being persecutory? Are they punishing you? Are they treating you in a very, very harsh fashion? Then that would be an example of malignancy. I mean, look, it's a complicated subject, but let's not make it more complicated than it is. You can just go and look up the 9 traits of narcissism, or the traits of borderline, or the traits of psychopathy. They're easy to understand. They're not written in like highfalutin ultra academic language. Anybody can understand the traits of narcissism, borderline, and psychopathy. And if you think the person is ticking the boxes, a significant number of boxes for these personality disorders, then yeah, you should run for the hills for sure.
Okay. Can a covert narcissistic mother create narcissism in her child or even in more than one of their children?
Yes, it's probably more likely than not that full-blown narcissistic personality disorder is probably modeled, usually, not always, but usually from one of the primary caregivers. And for most of us, not all of us, our primary caregivers would be our biological parents. So we don't do what our parents do, especially when we're pre-verbal. We start modeling, we don't do what our parents say when we're pre-verbal. We model what they do. So our first modeling of our parents is modeling what they do. So you will want to try and dress up in your dad's clothes if you're a boy, or your mum's clothes if you're a girl. You will want to say the words they say. You want to act the way they do. Kids do what their parents do. The children are also unconsciously absorbing how a parent deals with stress, how a parent deals with impulse, if a parent deals with impulse control, if a parent can deal with anger and frustration or not. And they model that unconsciously. So narcissistic personality disorder not only can be induced by a narcissistic parent, but more often than not, probably is induced by a narcissistic parent.
Okay, here's a separate question that's on actually a similar topic. But if the covert has had a psychotic break and was damaged as a child, why say they're evil if it's not their doing?
I don't know how useful it is to say that the person is evil. That's questionable. I mean, do you want to, how far do you want to take it? We're into philosophy here. Because if you want to be morally relativistic, we can take a Hitler, a Stalin, a Saddam Hussein and say, well, they're not evil. They just have bad childhoods. So at what point do you just go, you're evil? Well, I don't think I'm being philosophical, and I'm not saying yes or no or right or wrong. I'm saying I don't think it's a good way for us as individuals to live our lives, or for society as a whole to comport itself as though we were all psychotherapists. If somebody is engaging in evil actions consistently across time, you can say that they're evil. If you're a psychotherapist, you shouldn't say that. I don't think that's useful. If you're in a clinic and you're with a client, is it useful for you to denounce your client as just evil? Because it's a way of just writing the person off. Societally, people should be written off. Sorry if you don't agree with me. Sometimes we move from philosophy into politics. Some people must be written off in order for society to progress. You just go, well, you're just evil. We don't have the technology to save you. Maybe we will one day. Well, we almost definitely will one day. Like as medical advances are made, perhaps in combination with AI, you could look at certain people's patterns of behavior and go, okay, there's an endocrinal imbalance here. There's neuropeptides that aren't firing. There's parts of and we can fix that now. But right now, we don't have that technology. We don't have the resources. We don't have time. That's why we throw people in prison, because we've gone, well, you're evil. And if you're going to get a 25 to life sentence, then we think you are big evil. And that's what we've all kind of universally agreed, rightly or wrongly. It might not be the best thing to do. A psychotherapist never should. Are you a psychotherapist? Is this your client? If you're not a psychotherapist and this isn't your client, I would say if you want to say that somebody's evil because they do evil things, then say that they're evil. If it's a family member, if it's a child maybe, then maybe there would be an exception to that. I think you can, even if you're under any circumstances, you can say that people's actions are evil. And look, psychology and psychotherapy, generally speaking, is ideologically infected. It very much values like equality and fairness and nurturing type principles. And I actually think sometimes it's a terrible mistake because so I said before parentification. If I'm your parent and I make you take on my role, we call that parentification. If I'm a therapist and you're the client and your husband is a dick and he's doing evil stuff, and I say, well, he was burdened with that in childhood, it's not parentification, it's therapistification. And it has the word piss in the middle of it. Therapistification. I shouldn't do that. It's not right. It's not your burden to carry. You're just a presumably law-abiding citizen trying to go about your life. It's not your burden to carry. So is it useful to say that people are evil? Don't know. You do or don't. But I would say don't pretend to be a therapist. It's not your job. That's how I got out of my last narcissistic abusive relationship. I just took off the ideologically indoctrinated burden of being like, well, everybody has childhood trauma and you're trauma informed and you're therapeutically informed. You should forgive her. And I did that for a couple of years and I was like, hang on a second though. I'm not a therapist. I'm a boyfriend. This isn't my job. If she has problems, she can go to therapy. It's no excuse for abuse. So we don't write off tyrant. We don't give tyrants that get out clause. And if you do, you're a lunatic. If you're like, oh yeah, you killed 30 million of your own people, Stalin. Was that because your mum didn't hug you enough? But if you were his therapist, you absolutely should. And he was alive. You absolutely should say, why did you do this? Why did you create a system that did this, that, and the other thing? But as a human being, you go, no, he's just evil. I'm glad he's dead. If he wasn't dead, I'd make sure he was in prison or going to get shot because his actions are evil. He's an evil person. End of story. It's kind of a philosophical problem. Don't pretend. Don't walk around as many psychotherapists. That's what this culture is doing. It's encouraging people to take on the burden of psychotherapy. It is not your job. It's not your job. Don't do it. It will keep you stuck in shitty relationships and you won't be able to get out. You should be able to draw a boundary and go, hey, I think I told you 3 times to stop doing that. There's a 4th time you're still doing it. I'm out.
Boom.
Boom.
Is there a delicate way to help a brother-in-law understand he's trauma bonded with his mother? My sister and I can see we went through this with MPD father, but he's unable to see the trauma bond.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of ties into the last question, doesn't it? Like, is that your job? Has he asked you for a psychotherapeutic analysis? Has he asked you to role play as psychotherapist? You're using technical psychotherapeutic language, and then you're saying we need to have an intervention with him. Maybe. The other thing with this this ideological infection of nurturing, valuing equality above all else, and wanting to take care of other people, is it's actually very boundary breaking. It's very invasive. I have friends, and I don't say the word narcissism in my daily life. I don't even think it. It's not a filter by which I process reality. So people come up to me in the street and they'll be like, can you see who the narcissists are? Hi, Richard Grannon, the narcissism guy. Are you looking for the narcissists? And I'm like, this isn't a parlor game. It's not a witch hunt. No, I'm not. I'm living my life. I'm not worried about it. Yeah, I see stuff in my family where I can detect like kids are being parentified. There's emotional incest going on. Boundaries are being broken. What do you want me to do? Nobody asked me. If somebody comes to me and says, oh, I want to have a chat with you, I'll chat to them. Never in the history of my life has that made any difference, by the way. Never is that. If a friend or a family member asks me for help, they're just asking to vent. And I go, okay, so talk. And I'm good at listening. So I'll just be like, I'm going to give you my time and attention. I'm going to look at you while you're talking. And I'm going to listen to the words coming out of your mouth. And I let them vent. It doesn't really, I'm not aware of it having changed anything particularly. Respect other people's boundaries, including like if you think they're doing something wrong with, was it the mother or the mother-in-law?
It was the mother-in-law.
The mother,
the brother-in-law's mother.
The brother-in-law's mother. Just leave people alone, man. If he asks you for help, then you can be like, oh, I've got some YouTube videos for you. Here's some blog posts on the subject. But if he didn't ask you for help, what are you going to do? What are you going to be a person who's like, so I need to tell you, you're trauma bonded with your mother and she is a covert narcissist. You're going to damage your relationship with him. And that should be held as sacrosanct. The most important thing is that I have a bridge of trust to you so that you can walk across it to me when you want help, not so that I can offer my opinion about how you're living your life, because it's invasive. It's invasive unless he's in danger or something. And even then, he's an adult. Is he going to take your advice? Does he see you as like an authority on the subject of psychotherapy and life living? Is your life in order? Is your life in order enough for him to be like, well, I better do what they say? Got to ask these questions, La. Do you know what I mean?
How do I recover from narcissistic abuse if I still have to see the narcissist and be in touch about our child?
How do I recover?
Our child.
Our child that you have made with me. Sorry.
Maybe all the advice should be in an Irish accent. Might make it easier.
Or that weird Somerset Jamaican one I just did. God, sorry. I was a bit silly.
It's fine. So, how do I recover from narcissistic abuse if I still
don't you
have
love
to
that
see
accent?
the narcissist and be in touch about our child?
How now, brown cow? How to when you've got shared custody with the narcissist, what you need to do is try to reduce the significance of the narcissistic individual in your life, in your head, and in your body. It's not an easy thing to do. So what you're asking for is like, what words, what techniques can I do? What things can I say? What magic spells can I shazakazam? And then he stops being a dick or whatever, or she stops being a dick. But it doesn't really work like that, because a lot of what we experience as being out there, this is happening to me. It is, but it's more often than not, it's in here. It's a co-created kind of a thing. Not that narcissistic abuse isn't real and exploitation doesn't happen. It does. It absolutely does. But this question and a lot of the questions you'll hear, if I was coaching you, I'd be like, what's happening here? You want to be like, last Tuesday at 4 p.m., he said he'd show up and then he didn't. And then what he said with that, and you've got a story and it's out there, external locus of control. And I would be, and most, I think clinicians will draw you back to you. And that's why you have this trope where the clinician will say, and how does that make you feel? Well, I think that he should, but how does that make you? You, not him. I want to talk about you and how does that make you feel? Do you feel frustrated? Does it make you feel impotent? Does it make you feel enraged? Can you think of times in the past where you felt impotent and frustrated and enraged? Is this about this? Or all these feelings and all this anguish, is it about the past? It's a very, very, cookie cutter, classical psychotherapeutic stance. But I think that stereotypical way of doing things exists for a reason. I don't think it's useless. I think it has a point, and I have faith in it. I have a lot of faith in it because it's one of the things that's massively worked for me. So in order to reduce the significance of the person, I do have a course on that, and it's called, it's got narcissistic possession in the title. And I regret this title. I was reading Jung stuff at the time, so I was like, eradicate narcissistic possession. But really what it does is it reduces the narcissist's significance in your brain. So all of that wiring, all of that neural conditioning you have around this person being very significant, to the point where the person you're talking about sends you a text and your adrenaline goes and your heart rate spikes and your palms are sweating. You're like, oh, what now? What's the latest thing? What's the latest drama? Which you've become conditioned to. So people will look at you and they'll be like, you're addicted to the drama. No, it's worse. It's worse than being addicted to the drama. You're conditioned to it. It's a fully unconscious response to the point where your whole emotional regulation system starts to adapt around these regular spikes of stress. Could you read the question to me again, sir?
Of course. One moment.
I want to make sure I get to the point of it.
Of course. If I was looking for other questions, let me just get that one up specifically again.
Sorry, I've thrown it on your toes.
That's fine.
I wasn't ready for that.
What was the question again?
We have a child.
We have a child. That's the one.
Shared custody.
One moment. Here's at the bottom. 2 seconds, folks.
Sorry about this. It's my fault. Mea culpa. Mea maxima culpa. In nomine Patros et Filius et Spiritus Sancti.
We will find this eventually. If I can't find the exact wording of it,
don't worry. Don't worry. I think I got it. Yeah. It's if you're coping with this scenario and you're looking for coping strategies, I'd say go upstream. Deal with the fact that they're very significant for you, that they're spiking your central nervous system. Reduce that. I have the course, Eradicate Narcissistic Possession. It's on the website, richardgrannon.com. We're running a 50% sale at the moment. And the code, if you go to the page where you buy, the code that you need to put in from our Russian editor, Max, Tovarish Maxim, is October 50. October is in capital letters. It's uppercase. October 50. Spasiba. Next question.
We're running out of questions here, folks. So if you want to send in a few more while you can,
feel free to add questions in the chat.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to make note of them as I go, but
make them one sentence long and ending in a question mark.
Yes, please.
1 or 2 sentences.
Perfect. If someone keeps being mean and degrading when they experience rejection, should I forgive them and give them grace, or are they showing their real self, and should I reevaluate the relationship?
If someone keeps being, say that again.
If someone keeps being mean and degrading when they experience rejection, should I give them grace, or are they showing their real self and I should reevaluate the relationship?
I can't think of a situation where somebody were being rejected over and over and over again.
Yeah.
In a 2-person dynamic. What are you rejecting over and over and over? That would drive me fucking mad. Can I have this, please? No. Can I have this, please? No. What about now? No. What about now? No. No, you may not. I don't know if they get very angry when they're constantly being rejected for whatever it is they're asking for. Then it sounds like there's something that's gone wrong in the relationship dynamic there. I cannot think of a scenario where somebody would continuously ask me for something and I would continuously say no. Because when you said rejection, I immediately thought, oh, this person's approaching you for a relationship and you've said, no, I don't want a relationship with you. And then they ask you again. Then if that's the scenario, a little persistence can be quite romantic, I suppose. But I think after the first year, I would be like, stop sitting outside my house in the car, filming me through the windows.
No.
No, it's my favorite thing.
Okay. 20-year marriage to NPD and ASPD. 6 years now healing. Feeling really, really good. Is it helpful to let someone new to recovery from narc abuse that is going to take some significant time?
Is it helpful to let someone new?
Yes. Is it helpful to let someone new to recovery, let them know that it's going to take a significant amount of time?
Is it useful to let someone new to recovery let them know it's going to take a significant amount? It shouldn't take, if it's being done properly. I don't know. So we talk about recovery and therapy. And so like I would say when I'm doing therapy, I'm doing 1 hour a week. If you're really keen to recover and you can afford to do more time working on it, it doesn't have to be, I think they said 6 years.
Yes, 6 years of recovery.
It doesn't need to be 6 years. It doesn't need to be 6 years. If you go at it and you're like, I'm going to dedicate, because life sucks now, like, maybe you can't afford to do coaching every week. By the way, some of these people are charging like $200 a session. Go on your local counseling directory. If you haven't got that much cash, there's plenty of good counselors and psychotherapists out there who aren't taking the piss with like charging mad amounts per session. If somebody's going to charge $400 or $500 per session, I really need to know how many sessions we're doing. Like, I'm not going to be hanging around for like 200. You need to know what the result is going to be. And if the therapist can't make an agreement with you as to the time scale that you'll be working on it with, I would consider finding another therapist. I don't think for this specific problem, it should take more than 6 months. Now, you might say, that sounds a little bit too fast. Okay, what if you're doing an hour of therapy a week, but you were dedicating half an hour in the morning and half an hour every night to your recovery process, plus you were squeezing in like a 5-minute meditation or audio or something during the day just to reinforce these things. So if you do it, it's like when people ask questions about like getting strong, getting bigger muscles, losing fat. It was like, okay, there's only so much you can do over a certain time frame, but we can increase the results by the intensity. It's like, what can you tolerate? Can you do 5 hours a day? Well, nobody should be doing therapy for 5 hours a day, but if you can do more every day, then you'll recover faster. And it's focus as well. With this work on recovery from narcissistic abuse, dismantle the narcissistic fantasy consciously, piece by piece, and then reintegrate the fractured parts of the self and identify, resist, and change the narcissistic introject. These are incredibly important. We then need to do some work throughout the whole process from day one to day final on emotionally re-regulating yourself, because you won't get through therapy if you're not emotionally regulated. A good way of learning how to emotionally regulate yourself, free course. Go to Fortress Mental Health Protection System on YouTube, and there's a free course there. It takes about 30 days to get through to bring these emotional flashbacks down. Because if you're in a very emotionally dysregulated state, therapy is quite uncomfortable, or it can be quite uncomfortable. But if you emotionally regulate yourself first, then go to therapy and consciously be like, I am going to be the very best client this therapist has ever had. I'm going to tell them the total truth from the get-go, and I'm going to do what they tell me to do. I'm going to take it seriously. I'm going to do you're going to get better results. If you half-ass it, then you'll get crappy results. And then you'll be like, oh, therapy doesn't work, or the therapist sucks. Some therapists ain't great. Some therapeutic modalities ain't great, but we're in there too, aren't we? And we're adults also, aren't we? Nobody's coming to save us. So we also have to be having the will to fight and the intention to heal and move forward. That's as important as anything anybody can give us. Don't be passive.
My husband and our family have been in treatment, including rehabs, for 5 years for various addictions, sex and alcohol. NPD fits like a glove, but so does addiction. Is there any way to tell the difference?
Read it again from the beginning.
Of course. My husband and our family have been in treatment, including rehabs, for 5 years for various addictions. NPD fits like a glove, but so does addiction. Is there any way to tell the difference?
So the entire family has been in recovery for 5 years for alcohol, drug, and sex addiction.
That's what she says.
Good for you for going to therapy and working towards healing as a family. Yeah, there are overlaps with NPD and all addictions. So when you look at, if you just went and looked up something like, what are the most comorbid conditions with NPD? I think in the top 5, you'll see substance and alcohol abuse will be in the top 5 comorbidities. So that means if you're diagnosed with NPD, you would also be diagnosed with substance abuse disorder. Could be. It's likely. It's highly comorbid, as they say in the clinical language. It's highly comorbid. So yeah, there is overlap there. I mean, And I've known people who, when they're on alcohol or on drugs, do act more narcissistically. They're in pain. They're indulging in this coping strategy that breaks boundaries and alters their emotional state. And they can become quite obnoxious, entitled, and very, very self-centered, very, very self-pitying, very, very, they can become negativistic, they can become passive-aggressive. And all of these are, yes, associated with narcissistic personality disorder for sure. You raise a good point. Good luck to you and your family with that.
Yes, just to clarify, it was over his addictions, the
Oh.
husband's addictions.
The whole
specifically.
family's in recovery over his addiction.
That's seemingly so, but over his addiction specifically. I feel like that is the last of our questions. There,
No
Richard.
emailed questions and
no real further ones.
Hey,
Let me have a
chat!
look through.
Stop talking to each other and start talking to me. They're just, I can see the chat. It's full. They're just chatting away to each other. What did you have for tea last night, mate? Yeah, me too. So a question should be one sentence long, and then a question mark. You have this opportunity to ask me anything. You can ask me about questions that are not to do with narcissism if you want, because we've done narcissism for a little bit. So you can ask me about whatever you like. Favorite TV shows, favorite movies, favorite hip hop album. Do you have a favorite hip hop album, Dylan?
To Pimp a Butterfly, Kendrick Lamar.
Oh, a man of taste and class.
Come on.
Give us. I emailed a question. Are you not seeing it? It says Karen Brown.
Karen Brown. Let me have a look for Karen. 2 seconds. Okay, Karen Brown. Okay, yes, Karen. Here it is. Let me read it out for you now. I'm in a very toxic relationship. I do believe my partner is a narcissist. My partner is saying all of the right things, but I never feel safe or secure. I feel as if I'm losing my mind. My life is getting smaller and smaller. I no longer know who I am. I can't stop obsessing about him. I constantly check his devices. I got caught yesterday, and now I feel terrified because he pulled back and he says he doesn't know what to say because he thinks he is doing everything he can. I know this is unhealthy. I can't get myself to leave. He's very charming and everyone thinks he's amazing, so spiritual. He has many relationships with women in the past and there has been emotional infidelity. I don't think it's going on now, but he still helps a lot of women with their relationships, also in recovery. We're both sober. He is also a therapist. I have CPTSD, including trauma from a narcissistic dad who was an alcoholic womanizer, and I am constantly triggered by him watching everything he does. I am told we are in a trauma bond and I don't know how to break free from this.
Nothing is going to make sense or allow you to move forward in any meaningful way until the CPTSD is dealt with. So I don't know you. I don't know the relationship. I can't make an assessment about whether your perceptions are a reflection of reality. Your capacity to distinguish fantasy from reality, I don't know. But if you resolve the CPTSD, you would get a sense of what is really going on. When we're very emotionally dysregulated, our perceptions warp. But that doesn't mean that he isn't some sort of a dodgy character. Some of the things you've said make me think that maybe he could be, but that's not really for me to say. I think the only useful advice I can offer you is make resolving your CPTSD a top priority. And then when you can take a breath and you're not terrified of being abandoned, you're not terrified of being on your own, you know that you're strong, you know that you're capable and you're comfortable inside of your own skin, then you can look over, dispassionately take an overview of this man from someone else's perspective. What would I think if I saw him? What would your mom think if she saw him? What would somebody else think if they saw him? And then make an assessment from a calm, sane, safe state.
Perfect. I think there's a few more in the chat through. Let me just have a quick read through. Okay. Okay.
I was born in a Dublin street world. Sorry.
Historical trauma. Okay.
Historical intergenerational trauma. Come out, you black and tans. Go on.
Okay. Is the break narcissistic possession good for even if I'm in a permanent no contact with an NPD ex? I want to stop longing for my ex.
I don't know whether to advise you to do the integration course or the narcissistic possession course. You're longing for him. I think the narcissistic possession course would help you because it sort of takes you from one place to another where you start, you're very, very focused on that other person. You're very, very focused on the intrigue, the trauma, the drama, this happened, that happened, story, external, into living a peaceful, sane, happy life. And because you were conditioned into trauma, the course is my attempt to recondition you across time into peace, into sanity, into health. So yes, that would help. But then I also think you should probably get the narcissistic matrix reintegration course as well, because it sounds like that introject is at work. That introject has got you thinking about him in a mushy way, in a sentimental way. And I use these adjectives non-judgmentally and semi-humorously. I've been there. I've played the videos in my mind of ex-girlfriends and then got back with them because, I don't know, I just kind of, it's like a self-gaslighting exercise into doing it. Everything is 50% off on the site right now. Why not get both? If one of them works for you and the other one doesn't, you can get a refund on it. If neither of them work for you, you get a refund on both. If they both work, alhamdulillah, you can get on with your life. The 50% offer discount code is October in capital letters 50. October 50. October is in capital letters. 50% off everything on the site for the next few days. Get them both and see which one you like the most.
Okay, here's one from Stefan. How do I stop replaying the script from childhood in my future relationships?
I'm going to tell you in 1 minute, in exactly 60 seconds, what it's taken me 3 years of therapy. If I could bottle that, mate, I'd be a flipping millionaire. I'm trying to even think how I did it or how I was helped to do it. I have a good therapist. How do you stop the unconscious script from childhood playing out in your future relationships? You find a therapist who's very good with a modality called transactional analysis. You go to therapy and you listen to him /her/zer. And kidding. And you do that. What we did was we looked at the relationships in the present and the dramas in the present, and we associated them and drew parallels to what was going on in the childhood home. And then we figured out what my hungers were. This is transactional analysis talk. What my needs were and what my payoff was. So I had a hunger for drama. I had a hunger for conflict. I had a hunger for betrayal. I had a hunger for, can't remember. And all of these things, when you get them, even though they hurt, it's called script payoff. So we literally went through each relationship and each hunger and each payoff, and then sought to dissolve them by taking the parts of me, because some parts of me want that, and then the adult part of me doesn't. So then you have to have communication, internal communication. I don't think any therapy works without clarifying your internal communication. But unfortunately, I can't really give you what's really honestly been a couple of years of therapeutic work for my own childhood scripts and then how they manifested in my adult relationships. That's the best I can offer you. I hope that helps.
How do I navigate raising children with a C narc when no contact is not really an option? I am concerned about my sanity and my children's. How do I protect my children from a C narc mother?
As long as the children have contact, regular contact, sustained contact with one regulated parent, the children will develop fine. How do you manage the contact? You want to reduce the significance that she has to you. You want to reduce the impact that she will have now on your central nervous system. The covert narcissist, the fragile narcissist, really, really scrambles people up. It really leaves a big mess. So it's like the experience of dealing with a grandiose narcissist versus a covert narcissist is that the vulnerable covert narcissist is like a bad acid trip. You really don't know up from down. You're constantly confused. You're constantly questioning yourself. And that constant questioning of your own sense of reality leads to anxiety. Then that leads to learned helplessness, which can be then manifest as self-abandonment, which then becomes depression. It's a real mess. It's a lot to unpack. If you can unpack that therapeutically and you can reduce the significance of this person to you at an emotional, physical, central nervous system level, then you will be able to deal with her in a proportionate, distanced, non-triggered way. It is possible. I've lived it. So I know that it is possible. A good course for that is the Break the Trauma Bond course. There's an updated version of the Break the Trauma Bond course that's inside of the Unplug from the Matrix of Narcissistic Abuse course. But the original Break Trauma Bond course is very good as well. It's just I'm dressed very, very badly in it. It was a few years ago before my glow up. I had like discordant colors on and strange baseball. I don't know what I was doing. It was like dressing in the dark or something. Anyway, we all have made mistakes, Frodo.
How can I separate grieving death of my mother and death of the relationship? They happened at the same time.
I don't think you can. I don't think that you can. Grief is grief. And as wonderful, intelligent, complicated entities that we have evolved into across the millennia, there are still some parts of us that are quite simple. And the pain of loss is the pain of loss. So if you have two sources of the pain of loss, then you are going to end up grieving for both. So what I would recommend doing is trying to find a therapist who specializes in grief. Grieving is a skill. This is something that I only learned about 4 years ago, and it really, really helped me to understand. To be able to safely hold your own sadness and process it without thinking that the world is falling apart. I'm just going, this is a part of who I am. I breathe in, I breathe out. Sometimes I'm sad. Sometimes I cry. Tears are necessary. Sadness is necessary. Grieving is necessary. Letting go so that you can move on. Nobody wants to feel sad. That's like saying, like, nobody wants to feel bad. But if you don't do it and you suppress it, it's like this weird emotional constipation. You're never really comfortable. You're never really open to new experiences because a part of you that you've suppressed is always hooked into the past and that unprocessed sadness. When you've safely, in a systematic way, expressed the sadness and expressed the grief, you feel clean, you feel open, you feel free. You feel free. So that would be my recommendation. Deal with them both at the same time.
Here's another mother-related one. I love my mother to death, but as a child, I wasn't allowed to tell her no. She would get very angry. Could this be a factor to poor boundaries in relationships with women?
Yes. Very poor boundaries that you have. Young man. And we do know where you live. So if she wouldn't tolerate the word no, I know she says you love her to death. And the Freudian in me went, why to death? I love you so much. Mother. Yes, I'm sure you do love her to death. I wish I would die. I love you. No, I think, of course, it's going to lead to very poor boundaries with women. She is the archetypal woman for you. That's your first sense of a woman. That's your first intimate relationship with a female as your mother. So now you'll be entrained to think, I can't say no to women that I'm in an intimate relationship with. You can say no to your female friends. You can say no to women in the office. You can say no to female adult human beings in multiple contexts. But what I found is in that one context, in the intimate relationship, which triggers the mother wound, that was where I also struggled, really, really struggled to set boundaries and to say no, because I went through the same thing. But it is resolvable when you can recognize you're doing that. So you're asked to do something that you don't want to do, and then a lot of guilt and shame will come up, and you're like, I have to do this. And you can negotiate internally, not externally. You negotiate internally and say, it is safe and it is okay for me to say no to this request. And when you start saying no, you'll feel like it feels like a superpower. It's very, very powerful movement.
Okay. So, how do you heal from childhood sexual abuse that you don't remember? You remember a few boundary crossing sexual experiences as a kid, but I know there is more I don't remember and have a lot of symptoms.
I love you guys think I can resolve this stuff on live stream. I'm good, but I ain't that good. You don't need to remember everything. I think it's one of the myths that's come out of the psychotherapeutic tradition is you have to access the memories of times gone by in order to truly heal from it. Your body remembers, yourself remembers, your being remembers, and that which is significant to remember is indicated through your emotions. So what you're feeling now is what needs resolving, because we don't have a time machine. We can't undo what was done in the past. It has already been written. It's already written. You can't erase it. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is the way you feel today. Great. We can actually deal with the way you feel today. So the shape of your feelings around sexual intimacy, trust, romance is the hieroglyph, the ancient underground, in the dark, buried hieroglyph that we can decode that points to what happened, but we don't really need the gory details. It's not necessary, because the problem is today. Whatever scar that left, whatever shape of scar that left in you, that's still there, and it's expressed in the emotions you feel around these particular issues. Cool. That wasn't bad, actually. For a difficult question, I thought I nailed that.
Pretty good.
Yeah, high five self.
Hell yeah. Okay. I'm looking for some advice for feeling guilty for kicking out my toxic narcissistic ex, even though he destroyed some of my things and was abusive. It feels like an addiction.
So the shared fantasy, the narcissistic shared fantasy space includes this idea that you're the parent and they're the child. And so you can end up, when you rightly from your adult say, enough is enough, I'm not going to let you get away with this, off you pop, sling your hook, lad, and you get rid of them. What plays afterwards from the narcissistic introject is you've abandoned your child. And the feelings you get are like, oh my God, this really feels like I've abandoned the child. And the feelings of guilt are overwhelming, because there's that, they've introduced into the shared fantasy space that archetypal relationship of parent and child. Who's going to abandon their child? You'd be a monster to do that. You are not their parent. They are not your child. They were perfectly capable of living their entire lives before they met you, and they're perfectly capable of living their entire lives after they've met you. So don't let those introjects and injunctions deceive you. You must deal with the narcissistic introject, because that feeling, that movie that plays, that goes with the feeling, is coming from them. It's not coming from you. It's not coming from your authentic self. It's from them. It's a form of brainwashing in a kind of a cult of one. Cult of one, you say? The name of my book. Oh, wrong. Yes, look. Diddly. There's my book there. Cult of One, available from Amazon, Jeff Bezos' slave house. Please feed into the evil corporate machine that is Amazon, and increase suffering globally.
Ding. Which course would be good for healing from NPD, family of origin? I'm scapegoat, no contact, which has caused fear of managing life alone.
Family of origin is covered in Unplug from the Matrix of Narcissistic Abuse. That is a big course. It took me, no course has taken me that long to develop before. It took me 14 months from the first video to the final video. It is a lot of work. It would take, if you're processing it properly and you were really committed, it would still take you about 2 months to get through, but it's a very good course and it does what it says on the tin. If you've done that course and you liked it, please tell people about it in the comments and just be like, yes, the Unplugged from the Matrix course is the right course. So every time in the course when we're dealing with the different scenarios, I always raise romantic relationships, family of origin relationships, friends, and workplace relationships. So it's all covered. All of these different modalities are covered. The good news is, even though the course is quite difficult, not difficult, it takes time. You really have to stick with it. There's a lot of modules. The modules are not short, but it works. So choose your pain. Either continue to live with the pain of narcissistic abuse or go through the pain of my horrible course.
Here's one from Benjamin. Any quick tips for silencing ruminating thoughts and fantasies, especially at night? Also, thanks for recommending Waylander. Great book.
Did I recommend Waylander? I haven't read the Waylander books for years. I love those books. Waylander, great books. David Gemmell. No, quick tips. No, I don't do quick tips. Don't do quick tips, because if you try and do it quickly, you'll end up like chopping the leaves, but not pulling out the roots. So try and reframe this. Like, it's really, really bothering you. It's really disturbing your life. I know you're busy with other stuff. No, everybody's time poor now. Everybody is time poor. Nobody has like an abundance of time. But it is going to be well worth your time invested to actually pull this out at the roots. If I say to you, like, I don't know, if I give you a meditation and be like, just think about dolphins farting in the ocean. What are we doing? Like, it's not, there's no quick way around it. You've got to get to the heart of that interject and you've got to dissipate it fully. You think you're just ruminating at night. I would bet good money that it's actually impacting other areas of your life as well. You just haven't seen it yet. It's affecting your health. It's affecting your diet. It's affecting your sleep hygiene. It's affecting how much and how often you engage in self-soothing behaviors and other patterns as well. But you're only conscious of, oh, I'm ruminating at night. So I would say don't bother. There's no quick tips. It's like when people do, what quick tips to set up a business? What quick tips to set up money? There's nothing. It's bollocks. What quick tips to burn fat, get stronger, live a better life? There's no quick tips. Everything takes work. So just accept it. Do some work. It's not going to take the rest of your life. If you commit to it for 6 weeks, you should be on top of it.
How do I stop attracting narcissists? It's been so pervasive in all areas of life, and some of them can actually be so good at hiding and act like good people, and then behind the scenes be terrible partners.
You're not attracting them because you're not a magnet. You are attracted to them. So these things are co-created. Your unconscious script and your introjects recognize their unconscious script and their introjects, and you get together to play out the drama again and again. It seems to be coming from outside of you, but I assure you, it's coming from you as much as it's coming from outside of you. You have to change your unconscious script around, it was partners, right? Like
yes.
Presumably sexual.
Partners, indeed.
So your ideas around love, intimacy, trust, sex, all of that, they all need to be explored. And there's some dismantling there that needs to happen, because even the fact that you have framed this as saying, oh, I'm attracting them, means that you're externalizing the locus of control, which would indicate to me that one or both parents, if they didn't have MPD, had a narcissistic view of life that then you imbibed. It doesn't mean you have narcissism, but the narcissistic view of life looks like that. Like, this is happening to me. I'm not doing anything. I'm just showing up, and all of this is just happening to me. This is, what is that called? It's a defense. It's an alloplastic defense. It's you. It's you. I thought the same thing for years, but I realized, no, it's me. I just didn't see the other options. I didn't see other women. I was blind to them. I could only see women and be like, oh my God, she's so interesting. This one's really special. This one's really funny. This one's so clever. And that was what my conscious mind was saying. But unconsciously, it was like, I'm going to get abused again, which is what I wanted. I wanted to replay that childhood drama. We have 2 minutes left. Final questions, please, folks.
Final question. Let me pick out a humdinger.
A humdinger?
Yeah.
Young man, give us a humdinger there. How's about you there, wee man? Sorry, Jacob.
Okay.
Jacob's quietly working in the other room and I'm shouting.
One moment, folks. Let me just peruse.
Did I tell you most of my DNA is from Ulster?
Oh, really?
55%. Not just Ulster, mate. Sligo.
Is that why you can do 55% of the accent?
Oh, I tell you what. The young Irishman with the liver shot there. Nobody saw that one coming. Boom.
Okay.
We're having entirely too much fun on this live.
Okay, so last question. My mother passed away and I have become re-triggered CPTSD after years of no contact with my narcissistic family members, siblings. Where should I start? At the beginning again? Emotional literacy? There's no real question in that, but I think it's just
a general sort of a thing. The question mark is floating. Well, I don't know where you're up to. You said at the beginning again with emotional literacy, and I can hear this like, oh, I already did this. So I get this from clients when I used to see clients, and we would discuss what they needed to do. Some of them would say, and they do it like this, they go, but I already did that. I already did that. Look, if it was done properly, you wouldn't be here. Do you like BJJ? Probably not. There's exercises that they do in BJJ that prepare you to fight. You do them on your own. There's one thing they do on the floor. It's called shrimping. It looks ridiculous. You shrimp across the floor on your back. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's a way of escaping top mount. If you go through the motions, you can shrimp. You can just go through the motions and go across the floor. I'm shrimping. I'm shrimping. I'm shrimping. Everybody's shrimping. When you're doing drills on your own for combat sports, for boxing, and you're not vividly imagining with the intention of it working in real life, nothing happens. We can all make symbolic gestures towards stuff. It's your life. I'm not another parent. I'm not another authority figure. I'm not a priest. I'm just a dude. I'm just a guy. I came up with some ideas. You take from me, you take from her, you take from him, the stuff that works, you bring it together and you work it with discipline and consistency. Fight your own corner. Fight for yourself. Make it work. Make it work. Then when it has worked and you're getting results, then you can move on. If you show up and just be like, I'm going to do emotional literacy today a little bit, but you're not present. You're not there. You're not there with the intention of, I'm going to heal. I'm going to make progress. You probably won't. So do you need to go back to the beginning? I don't know what you need to do. I don't know where you're up to. You do. If you see a weakness and it needs resolving, who's going to resolve it? There's only you. Nobody's coming to save you. Folks, we have a 50% sale on richardgrannon.com. Please use it's a very simple code and I keep having to look at it. It's the code at checkout is October, capital letters, 50, and it gives you a 50% discount, which is a ridiculous discount. I should change it, but it's too late now. It is too late now. It's 55%. It's terrible. I can't. It's in my DNA and I can't do it. I can't do it. What's an Ulster accent anyway?
It's here. It's neither here nor there.
Are you're not Ulster,
I'm
right?
Ulster, yes.
I'm
Ulster.
We're cousins.
Yeah. Brother.
How's about you there? Okay, that's enough of that nonsense. Thank you all so very much for your time and for your attention. Please give a like, a follow, all of the things that we must do to supplicate before the gods of social media. I hope that you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for your time, for your attention. Thank you very much to Dylan for helping me today. We have been live at Liverpool Podcast Studios. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much and goodbye.